welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Wrong Doctors, written by McEdam. This story sees Mel as the main focus of the story. Mel was a companion of the 6th and later 7th Doctor, and she had a very unique part to play in Doctor Who's chronology. In her first appearance, Terror of the Vervoids, which was the 3rd story in the Trial of the Time Lord storyline, she actually appeared in a vision of the Doctor's future. In the next story then, The Ultimate Foe, she appeared then to the younger Doctor who was on trial. And that story ended with them leaving together, despite the fact that she, from the Doctor's point of view, the Doctor hasn't met her yet. This was supposed to be resolved in the next season. However, due to Colin Baker's firing, because Michael Gray just hated the show and basically wanted it to fail, and so he asked John Nathan Turner to fire Colin Baker, we never got to see these plans come out and come forth, which is a crying shame. This also puts her in a unique pedestal of companions who never had, not only had no introduction story, putting her alongside Susan Foreman, the Doctor's own granddaughter, but she's also one of the few companions who has met the Doctor out of chronological ordering. Only 3 companions, as far as I'm aware, have this distinction. First being Charlie Pollard, who met the 8th Doctor, then the 6th Doctor. We have then River Song, who's met the Doctor in various different incarnations throughout his timeline. And of course we have Mel Bush. So that puts Mel in a very unique situation. However, I have to bring out a bit of a bad news. If you're buying this story to find the Mel introduction story, you might be a bit disappointed. There is actually a introduction story for her, a novel by Gary Russell. I believe it's called Business Unusual. However, I have not tackled it. I was tempted to. It's on eBay for like 50p. But after struggling with the Festival of Death, the 4th Doctor novel, which I've talked about in this marathon, I've decided that I'm going to just stop buying Doctor Who novels because I really struggle with them. I still have some novels later down the line, but they're ones I've already bought. So I'm using this story as her introduction story, as it's got a much more timey-wimey and it's got elements about her introduction in this story, and it tackles her as a character and her unique situation with the Doctor. So I'm personally using this story as her introduction story, if anyone's that interested. This also puts a very unique case into Big Finish. For you see, the 6th Doctor started out in the TV appearances being a very brash and thinks of himself, very egotistical Doctor. However, through Big Finish putting him with companions that really can stand up for themselves, like Evelyn Smile, Charlie, I don't think Constant and Flip were companions at this point in terms of release order. But these effects and these characters have actually softened the Doctor up, and many agree that the 6th Doctor that we see in most of the audio dramas is a very different portrayal than the TV appearances. And Big Finish used this opportunity to basically show that off, as not only do we get introduced to a much older 6th Doctor who's wearing his blue costume, which I've talked about, which was introduced in a webcast called Real Time, if I'm not mistaken. But it also has a much younger Doctor who's just come out of the trial segment. And he's wearing his traditional costume, and he's got the much more brash, thick-headedness of the TV counterpart. So it's basically Colin Baker interacting with himself, and you can compare the two versions of the Sixth Doctor, showing that he has come a long way. Another aspect of the story I would like to talk about is its immersion. Many stories that we've been tackling recently, especially with the Flip and the Constant stories, they feel much more entwined with newer audience viewers. If you're going into them stories hoping that it will capture some of that authentic, vintage feeling of the TV series, like the right music, the right type of stories, you might be a bit disappointed. Personally, I really loved what they did with the Sixth Doctor's era. Yes, it might feel a bit like they put the Sixth Doctor in a New Who style story, but I think for the very limited time that we had Colin Baker, and the fact that his era didn't end, it allowed Big Finish the opportunity to do something completely different with it. However, I think for the fact that they're being reintroduced back to Mel, we've got a much more authentic feeling. The storyline feels like it came from the 1980s. It's set in modern times in the 1980s. I believe they said 1987. 1986. One of those years. And yeah, it just feels more like what I would consider what the Seventh Doctor story would be like, where it's very silly, it's very pantomime. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. A lot of people use pantomime as a bad connotation, but just the overall feeling feels very pantomime-y. And that might be because Bonnie Langford's in it, so who knows. And yeah, so if you are interested in hearing some Big Finish audio dramas that feel more in time with the TV series, this might be for you. Now, as always, this is the official Big Finish CD cover with the two Collins right there, and because his face is there, there's actually three of them technically in the intro, and we got young Melly B, and like always, I make my own DVD cover. There have been people who have made great DVD covers. In fact, I borrowed many elements of this from DeviantArt, but I wasn't happy with the image, so I actually cropped the image myself. You can kind of see that the Doctor on Colin Baker's face kind of looks a bit blurry, and that's because I kind of rotoscoped it from a previous, because the font is much more accurate. The younger Colin Baker looks really scary there. It looks like he's staring into your soul. Hello there, I'm Colin Baker. And there's the spine, if anyone is interested. Again, I don't know why it's so blurry. That's probably better, is it? Better for you? And of course, the back, which you can clearly see is not one of mine. It's from DeviantArt. So I highly recommend tracking them down, these covers. They are really cool. So there you go. So the story starts off on a bit of a sad note. The Doctor is eating the last piece of cake made by Evelyn Smythe, his companion throughout the majority of his audio adventures. We haven't tackled her because I didn't get time to listen into those. And in terms of chronological appearances, her audio dramas are a confusing mess. But yeah, anyway. And he quotes Shakespeare. He does the whole the world is merely a stage. All the men and women's needy players. They have their exits and their entrances. And he says goodbye, basically, to Evelyn when she's not there, because they've just recently departed. And the Sixth Doctor decides, right, this is the time. This is time for me to meet, to finally interact with Miss Mel Bush. And so the story then takes place back in Pease Pottage, the hometown of Mel, where we actually get to see a scene takes place right after the Sixth Doctor's trial, in which he's putting Mel back to her own town. And right off the bat, we see a complete difference. This Doctor is much more... he likes that his voice is much louder than everyone else. Mel tries to question him or debate about him, but the Sixth Doctor's having none of it. He raises his voice and is like, I must not know about my future! Mel points out that, shouldn't you bring me back to where I was originally taken? I wasn't taken at Pease Pottage, I was taken at... I can't remember what she says, but the Sixth Doctor states that he'll know that when she goes missing, that he knows that this will be the place that they left him off. And so, there you go. Although I don't know why he would come back for you. I don't know how the hell I put up with all that carrot juice and exercise. Reference to the to Terence of the Vervoids and The Ultimate Foe, in which she's this, she's basically looking after the Doctor's weight, making him go on the exercise machine and making him drink really disgusting health drinks. And even Mel points out that this Sixth Doctor, this version of the Sixth Doctor, is much more brash than what she knows. And so they kind of separate for a moment, and the Sixth Doctor is like calling out to the Time Lords. It's like, there, I've done it. Now you can all leave me alone. And he walks off to the distance. Mel then goes home, but however she notices something odd. When she gets home, she meets a cat who she initially is like, hold on, we don't have a cat. Are you a stray that's gotten into the house? And she's like, oh, it's just me and you then. Then she talks about how she used to know a stray cat that would come into her house. And then it clicks. Wait a minute. You're the same cat. But that can't be right. You died 3 months before I first met the Sixth Doctor. Oh dear. Yes, the Doctor has accidentally put her in too early. And then the future Sixth Doctor appears and comes knocking on the door. And Mel's like, right, this is probably him now arriving to realise his mistake. And the Doctor, she opens the door to the Doctor and it's like, hello, you don't know me, but I'm the Doctor. You just left me on the trial. And the Doctor's like, oh dear. So there's a lot of timey-wimey confusion. Something that really would have aligned with the Seventh Doctor era. This feels like a proto-Seventh Doctor story in the kind of style and it's talking about, especially when we get introduced to younger Mel. Yes, there's actually another Mel, and she's getting prepared for a festival of Pease Pottage. She's on stage and she sings the nursery rhyme, Pease Pottage hot, Pease Pottage cold, Pease Pottage on the roll, 10 days old, or something like that. I can't remember how it goes. But when you listen to this song in this story, it's going to get stuck in your head. I promise you that. After listening to this story, that's all I had in my head, is that song just going and this guy's basically organising everything, this festival, and he's like basically like auditioning her, say. However, there's some traffic outside causing a lot of racket, and gets very mad at this, so he goes outside to confront one of the drivers. He states that there are signs basically pointing people away from Pease Pottage so they can go around without disturbing any of the rehearsals and stuff. And this guy is like, what are you on about? I have been paying my taxes, I can do what I like, I can drive wherever, there's nothing that you can do that can stop me from driving this road. And then suddenly we hear screeches as suddenly it's like, what the hell is that? But the guy who's organising everything, I believe Stapleton Petersbridge, he doesn't seem to really take any notice, as if like it's a usual occurrence that there is I believe it's a pterodactyl, oh no, it's a dinosaur, but I can't remember what dinosaur it is, comes and actually attacks and crushes the car. This young Mel then goes off to her job where she bumps into the younger Sixth Doctor after the Sixth Doctor is examining the destroyed car. But the young Mel doesn't seem to even see it. And the Sixth Doctor then kind of works out, it's like, oh bugger, I've run into, I've complicated my own time stream. This isn't good, I need to go back and get the older Mel. However, before he even gets there, he hears voices coming from behind him, to where suddenly he gets trapped in a net, this person in the voice. This voice turns out to be the older Sixth Doctor. And then there's some really great humour about the Sixth Doctor commenting on the later Doctor's blue costume, and that there's this whole distrust with one another. It's like, hold on, how do I know that you are just not some shape-shifting alien that's out to get me and to ruin my magnificent reputation? Kind of like brash. And really the Sixth Doctor kind of sees how basically what the audience thought of him during the TV era, and is like how he puts up with them. After doing a telepathic connection, a reference to the Three Doctors, does he prove that he is an older Sixth Doctor, and he gets freed by his younger incarnation, and they basically plan to like, right, something's really odd here, something's not making quite much sense, but we need to keep the two Mels apart. So you meet one Mel, I meet the other Mel. One of them then meets the younger Mel in her place of work, where she's a cleaner for this aerial dish, the inside of a radio station, and the Doctor comes to meet her to just make sure that she's all right. However, he notices that some of the technology is way too advanced, and that there is something much more sinister at note. The Doctor also learns something very odd about the young Mel. She knows nothing about computers, about technology. Something which is very unusual, as according to the older Mel, she's always been a very smart, intelligent, especially when it comes to computer programs. But this Mel seems to be a bit dull, a bit, I don't want to say stupid, but she's not as smart as her older appearance, which doesn't make any sense. She also seems to be very confused and things, doesn't seem to remember a lot. There's also people walking around in different periods of periods. There's her ex-boyfriend, Judadas, who apparently thinks it's like millions of years ago, and we got this old woman who presumably lived throughout World War I and World War II, and she actually appears in Mel's house at one point, knocking on the door, and she says that to the older Mel that she's been looking after her whilst your parents have been away, and Mel has no idea what she's on about. So yeah, there's a lot. It's a really confusing plot, and I will summarise because there is just so much going on in this story. Basically, there's a lot of running around after characters, just trying to work out what's going on. It's really worth the listen. I highly recommend it. It reminds me a lot of Survival and Ghost. Basically, the story feels like if Survival and Ghostlight met each other and had this weird, strange atmosphere and feeling. And what's really great about this is that not only does this tie in with the atmosphere of the Seventh Doctor era, feeling like this story is the beginning of the end for the Sixth Doctor, but it also, as well, perfectly fits in line with Big Finish's own storytelling of very strange, bizarre situations and very abstract concepts. To brush along later on in the story, we later learn that there's this whole group of people basically planning on invading Earth using Pease Pottage as some sort of figuration to manipulate time and reality. Even the Doctor mentions about parallel dimensions and the causal nexus, which is really strange because in our last video, The End of the Line, that also tackled about parallel universes and alternate dimensions. The Doctor theorises that this might be what happening to Mel. This younger Mel might actually be from a alternative timeline. However, he quickly debunks that for various reasons. And we also get introduced to, like, the main villains turns out to be the Doctor. I like the Doctor's description of the main body of threats. He says it's like they're the worst criminal of all of the galaxy. And Mel's listing off like, what are they? Pirates, gangsters, murderers. What are they? And the Doctor's like, no, far worse. Business consultants. Basically, the main villains, Stepaston, Peterberg, I'm mispronouncing his name, I do apologise. He's been organising these group of people to examine his version of Pease Pottage in an alternate, strange, abrupt timeline. And is getting basically help to learn how to invade Earth and create slaves, basically. That sounds something really like a pantomime. That sounds really pantomime, doesn't it? Again, tying it with the themes and the style of the Seventh Doctor stories, in which silly, ridiculous concepts like that and very heavily political themings of commercialism and like social gatherings and stuff, how that negatively affects the people that they control. Very similar in that sense to the Happiness Patrol. So that's very interesting. The older Doctor confronts Petersburg Bridge, and he explains what he is. He is what he calls a vortex demon. But the Doctor creates that there's no such thing. He's actually some sort of creature that lives in the vortex because he was never meant to be made. He was never meant to be a real form of reality. He's not a real creature in the sense. He was created in, during, and by the vortex of the timeline. The vortex that TARDIS goes through. And the Doctor kind of clicks that his It's his two TARDISes appearing in Peace Pottage so close together actually created this disturbance in time, allowing for him to come into Peace Pottage and mess things up. We also learned that he is after Mel. He's trying to get the two Mels to connect, their minds to connect, so he can use her magnificent brain and her very unique aspect in the timelines, because she can jump back and forth through the different areas in the Doctor's chronological timeline, which means that she's a very unique creature, and that he can use her to bring himself into reality, where he can then invade Earth and become a real entity. Again, very abstract concepts, and that reminds me really heavily of Light from Ghostlight, this creature who he kind of like examines humans, he kind of plays this game, also like Fendrick from The Curse of Fendrick, where he's kind of like he's playing a game with all these human lives. The Doctor then like clicks, it's like, hold on, if the two Mels meet up and they intertwine, then their timelines could mix up and they could die. They could it could rewrite the Doctor out of existence, leading into the cliffhanger to part 3. As we're on the concept of cliffhangers, I found cliffhanger 1 and 2 extremely weak. They just kind of seemed like they just sort of happen. Especially part 1, where it's like Mel tells someone to like run with her, and then the credits roll. But unlike usually where there's the sting, and usually it kind of just like fades in, and we'd never get that oh my god moment. But cliffhanger 3, which leads into episode 4, is a real great cliffhanger. During this point, the two Mels have met, whilst they've meted up with the Doctors prior to the in the scene. There's a great little joke where the young Doctor, to not confuse them, basically states that the older Mel is Mel A and young Mel is Mel B. And Mel B, shall we say then, says, what if we meet another Mel? Will she become Mel C? And both the Doctors like, that's preposterous. The Spice Girls are not even together yet. So a nice little humorous, cheesy little reference to things to come from the 80s and 90s. So that's really that's a real funny little joke. However, Mel is trying to help, the older Mel's trying to help the younger Mel's memories, because Mel is supposed to have this photographic memory, but she doesn't remember any of this. And also the younger Mel doesn't seem to know a lot about things. Like Mel is supposed to be a computer genius, specifically in programming. But the younger Mel doesn't seem to know anything about this. And I believe she states that she's never been to university or college. So that's a very strange thing. And when they take the younger Mel to the theatre, she starts doing the peas pottage hot, peas pottage cold, but the older Mel's like, hold on, I don't remember it like that. And then she starts singing it, but they're like out of tune, and slowly they're getting closer and closer to similar. And the Doctor then slams the door in. It's like, stop it, Mel! She's trying to rewrite reality. She's going to get us out of reality. And that's our cliffhanger, and that's really great. And what I really like about this cliffhanger is in the next episode, we actually see various characters that we've met just after the intro, kind of just like living life and setting up the plans before we actually get a resolution to the cliffhanger. A little suspense as we as a viewing audience are like, hold on, is the Doctor been rewritten out of reality? But luckily he got there in time that the older Mel snapped out of it. However, the younger Mel is still saying the nursery rhyme. And one of my favourite moments is the older Mel, because she couldn't convince the younger Mel to stop, punches her square in the face to snap her out of it. Brilliant. Not even... I think they specifically say that she punched her in the face, not slapped like that. The idea of Bonnie Lanford hitting her younger self is a really funny concept. Well, we need to talk about Mel and Bonnie Lanford. As you might remember in my videos for the Trial of the Time Lord, you might remember me stating that Mel is my least favourite companion of the classic era. And yeah, I wasn't joking on that. From her TV stories, which at the time were the only stories that I had seen, she's annoying, she screams, she tries to take control, but I realised in Terror of the Vervoids and The Ultimate Foe that I might have been a bit too harsh in my first reactions. Doing this marathon, I see that there is potential there. And one of my issues was that Bonnie Lanford kind of plays it as if she's playing it towards kids, towards a little audience, so it kind of feels like she's playing it for a children's programme. And what I was really hoping was that listening to the audio dramas this time around and having it all together would make me appreciate Mel more and make me... I basically hoped that I get proven wrong that she is a bad companion. And so far, we got one great hit as Mel becomes a big part of the plot. She does seem to be... Bonnie Lanford does seem to be pulling it back a bit from her very bombastic self in the TV appearances. But she's still Mel. She still feels like herself. Maybe it's the same. It's just now clicked. They've done the same thing with Mel as they've done with the Sixth Doctor, where the younger Mel is the very child-friendly, almost acting like Bonnie Lanford's playing it for the kids with the peas pottage thing and doing the theatre. And then we've got the older Mel, who is much more intelligent. She's much more of a character, much more in line with a genuine audience in terms of her performances. But unlike the Sixth Doctor, where there kind of is a storyline going, with Mel, it does kind of just feel like this is for the sake of the audio dramas and viewers retrospectively knowing the behind-the-scenes stuff. As Mel's character was very like this character in the trial segments of Trial of the Time Lord. So it's right before the older Mel for this story. And she would also go and play this version in later stories in our chronological appearances in Time and the Rani and so forth with her stories with the Seventh Doctor. So this comparison of the two Mels, it's more retrospective for the audience than it is for the actual story itself. But it still really works, and I really like what they've done with Mel here. Later on, the Doctor realises that this radar dish isn't actually connected to radio waves, it's for parallel universes waves, the causal nexus of time. And Mel, because the older Mel, who's much more smart with computer programs, actually types in the entire the codes to solve itself so that they can fix time. And this basically annoys Peter's Bridge, who goes basically on a killing spree, trying to stop the two doctors and the two Mels from interfering. However, something happens. I can't remember what particularly happens. I think the younger Mel, who... This is one of my really great bits in this, is that everybody kind of treats the younger Mel as kind of useless because she doesn't know computer programs. There's even a great bit where the younger Sixth Doctor gets captured and is basically put on to be burnt. And he kind of clicks that nobody can see the younger Mel because she is out of time. She is out with the reality of this world. However, because she's not the tech genius, that she is useless to him. And the Sixth Doctor just basically tells her to just go, run, just leave me here. There's nothing you can do. Just... if you want to do anything, just get the other Sixth Doctor, the other Mel, to come forth and try and save the day. There's nothing you can do. You're useless. He actually says that she is useless, kind of showing that brash, arrogant Sixth Doctor. But even the older Sixth Doctor kind of sees her as useless. He's much more kinder to her and much more as like thing, but he doesn't see her as a companion quality and is kind of like she's more. He feels like that she in this state is more of a bystander than anybody who can help. But the young Mel actually proves herself as she forces herself to unravel the causal nexus of this reality, setting everything back in its own proper place and time. So Jebediah goes back to the 1800s. The old woman goes back to where she passed away in the 1980s. In the 1960s, sorry. Here's a spoiler warning. Massive spoiler warning. So the Sixth Doctor, the older Sixth Doctor, goes up to the younger Mel to try and see how she's going. However, she is on the floor. She's collapsed. She's dying. And she's looking at the Doctor's coat, the blue coat, and she says that she prefers the colourful coat. She prefers the coat of many colours that the younger Doctor has. And the Doctor's like, you really are a girl from the 80s. I love that line. I really love that line. And it's here that we learn that the Sixth Doctor wears his original costume again, which we see at the start of Time in the Rani, because of a tribute to Mel. The Mel wanted this to wear his original costume because personally she prefers it because she likes the pantomime stuff, and she even makes a joke at one point that the younger Doctor's auditioning for the Joseph and Coat of Many Colours, which I think is actually the first joke of the Joseph that we actually get in our chronological ordering. So that's really interesting. And the Doctor's with her as she dies and collapses. And the Doctor's like, oh Mel, I would have loved to have taken you, this version of you as my companion. You would have been a great adventurer. And so the Sixth Doctor then gets reunited with himself and the older Mel. And they basically state it's like, right, everything's unraveling, everything's getting back to normal. You take, the younger Doctor takes the older Mel back to where they left off in blah, 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 before she was taken out of time for the trial. And Mel states to the Sixth Doctor, to the older one aside, "Don't worry, I remember everything. Thank you, Doctor." And they leave in their TARDIS to disappear. And we get a scene, reminds me a lot of New Who. In fact, I can even state that it reminds me really heavily of the scene in Silence of the Library when the Doctor realises that River's soul is in that thing. Basically, the Doctor realises, like, hold on, this Mel wasn't an alternate timeline. She is the real Mel, and that Mel remembered it. She remembers everything now because of her memories have been unscavelled throughout the story. She's been like picking up new memories, and because of her photographic memory, she's been quickly able to put them into the right place and time in her memory. And the Doctor clicks. It's like Mel is still alive. She didn't die. She was caught in the vortex, in the time manipulator, and I need someone to know who she is to unravel her and put her back in her own proper place and time. And the Doctor's like, damn it, I never met her. And the other two, and the real Mel, who, you know, obviously knows herself, has just gone. But there's someone I do know, the TARDIS. And so he puts the control through, and he basically frees Mel's soul to return back in its own proper place and time with no memories of these events. The Doctor then states that to himself that the reason why this whole situation happened is basically he tried to force destiny. He tried to go, right, it's time to meet Mel, let's go and meet Mel. But in reality, it should be more like a casual meeting, like when next time he randomly goes to Peace Pottage and meets Mel, it will be natural. And so the Doctor states that one day he's going to meet Mel, but not yet. Of course, I'm using this as her introduction story because why not? It's the earliest point for her in the audio dramas. But anyway, so that's The Wrong Doctors. Overall, I had a lot of fun in this. It can get a little bit confusing, but it never got so confusing that it abrupts the theme and the emotions of the story. The two Doctors working off each other are extremely enjoyable, and really has like Big Finish basically reflecting on itself as it sees two Doctors, one at what they've done to him and one right at the start of his timeline, interacting and just showing how much work they've put into him. The same thing really with Mel in a way, but on a much more subtext, a much more metatextual level than the Sixth Doctor. It's got great things to talk about with the McEdam and society at large, which is something that would become very common in the Seventh Doctor era. However, I don't think it's like amazing. I think it's great. The story's great. However, I do have a few issues. Some of the cliffhangers are really weak. The villain doesn't really become interesting until the very end of the story, and sometimes the plot with the other characters do feel like they're getting in the way to try and slow the pace down. Sometimes the pace goes very well, and sometimes the pacing seems a bit slow for my liking. But it's still a very great story, and I highly recommend it. So there you go, The Wrong Doctors. Check it out. And here we are at last. Join me next time, where the Doctor and Mel confront the Doctor's future, where everything is at the brink of destiny, of reality itself. The Doctor must confront his future. must confront all of his darker aspects, confront his regeneration. And I'll see you next time for the last adventure, the brink of death. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta!